All right. It's Real Estate Radio in our Get to Know series. I've been trying to get to know this guy for a long time. We've had a few conversations, and he's not here to be average. He's here to be awesome. And I welcome Brian Burns to our call today. Brian, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me. Great to be here.
So we tried this. We had a Zoom breakdown with technology issues, and it's perfect for our industry of real estate because there's tech issues all over the place. So the fact that we ran into one. But we already did a kind of a dry run, if you want to call it that. And I want to just touch on that real quickly because you mentioned as I start these, we talk about a little bit country, a little bit rock and roll, and you said rock and roll, which is fine. But now let's dig just a little bit deeper. You're going to that deserted island. You can only bring one MP3, CD, 8-track, whatever it is. What's Brian bringing?
Probably U2.
No way.
Why? No?
Well, you're just saying that because you watch my videos or no?
No.
Yeah, well, so yeah, that's I've been a U2 freak like forever, and going back, I say it was I was 16, so 1980. I went to Toad's Place, New Haven, Connecticut, to the bar. There's some punk rockers from Ireland playing in there, and I saw them for the first time, Brian, and I never turned back. Genuine, 3 guys with instruments, 1 guy singing. I just love basic rock and roll.
Yeah, I think if you tell me the age of somebody, I can guess at least one of their favorite artists. It's right at that age. It's that high school to college age. Whoever's popular at that time sticks with you your whole life.
Yeah, but also what you're brought into. I was brought in with like my dad's the Beatles guy and Jim Croce and some folks that I still listen to and still really adore, but you find your own place.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's that one? It's a U2 CD, Joshua Tree?
Joshua Tree was huge. Yeah, that was probably game changing, certainly for them. And
right.
Yeah, and it just
look at Brian.
Yeah, so
talking the music.
Well, even I love modern stuff today, and I listen to it. But when I have a Sonos system in the house, but once I put on like U2, it just clicks. It just brings you back.
So there's a new song, Ahimsa. Have you heard this thing? It's an Indian. U2 is in India like for the first time ever, and so they wrote a song called Ahimsa, and the Ahimsa Indian word means nonviolence, kindness, which is pretty much my world. I try to live in, and so that song to me really should take off because it's like a meditation song. We need some kindness. So I thought it would work. Every time I push a U2 song, it just, so I'm going to let them do their own thing.
Yeah, cool.
So Brian, I definitely feel like, Brutal Truth About Sales, your podcast certainly has influenced me. We talk about the impact these have on others, being the most important. That's why we do them, right? So being the guru, leading the charge, if you will, as we do these podcasts, I look at my audience of real estate agents in the independent contractor world. Maybe we can speak to a little bit about that, how managers can corral them, which is easy, herding the cats, as we talked about. But with the folks that are thinking about podcasts, maybe you can speak to that too. Because as realtors want to grow their audience, one of my thoughts was, we don't necessarily want to provide the audience. We could do that. We also want to provide the content, being maybe the more important, not necessarily more important piece, but something that has to be understood.
Right, because both are hard, right? Because an audience takes time to build, and good content takes a skill, right? And a lot of people try it. I think podcasting, like blogs or any content, what you see is people start really hard, and then they peter out. And I've seen it because I've been doing this for 10 years. And certainly probably about 3 years ago, somebody put a course out there, and this one person was very successful. Hundreds of people took the course, and all of a sudden there were 100 daily podcasts. And I go, it's too much, guys. It's like a year later, they all drifted away.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But it is a great way to connect with people and to share your message, because I think salespeople are much more apt to consume content, audio, over written word.
Yeah, I agree.
Because I look at, how many sales bloggers have any audience. I can't think of a single one, and I see companies put blogs out there, and I talk to them. I go, how many read it? Well, we got, 12 views, right? And they spent a week producing it.
Mm-hmm.
But I, think about when you were a sales guy. Even when I came up, I had cassettes in the car, and I played them over and over and over
Who did
again.
you listen to? Who did you listen to? Who was your go-to?
I had, I was probably started with Dennis Waitley,
Okay.
The Psychology of Winning, Brian Tracy, Tony Robbins. So it was.
And you did quite a bit of that listening.
I mean, to the point I would wear a set out.
Okay.
Yeah. And I wanted to be successful, and you just kind of had to change that mindset, had to change the way you viewed the world. Just complaining about it certainly didn't get me anywhere.
Right.
And so today I think it's people listening to podcasts, right? Because you get to listen to somebody else's journey, their lessons. And what I say about genius is the ability to learn from others' mistakes instead of you having to touch the stove to find out if it's hot. You see your brother touch the stove and burn himself, right? The likelihood is pretty high that I will burn myself too.
Right. Yep. Well, no, as the leader and all that, you're setting some trends and people pay attention. And as I talked to you about, what I was paying attention to mostly was your short little snippets that were 30 seconds, 45 seconds a minute, making me giggle and making me think. I think that was kind of your goal.
Well, yeah, because it was kind of an epiphany that I had probably in June this year, was that I was doing kind of tips for about a year and a half before that. And I get 5,000 or 10,000 views. But there was a lot of hate, a lot of disagreement, misunderstandings, different viewpoints. And I was like, well, why don't I do it from a comical standpoint, where it's more like me talking to someone else on the phone and you're an observer. So you're observing it, and now I can make fun of the viewpoint I'm trying to show.
Okay.
And I just did it once without the phone, and it just blew up.
Yeah.
And I had so much fun doing it because I'm out walking, and I hate getting into arguments with people online. So let me just make it so obvious that it's dumb to do what you're doing.
Tongue in cheek, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
And of course, there's still hatred, but at least I had fun doing it.
Right.
And then I go, well, this is so much more fun than trying to come up with a great tip and explain it exactly right with all the context so people can understand it. Otherwise, a lot of people would read the title and not watch the video and comment on the title. And it's like, did you watch the video?
Yeah. Well, I've seen many of your comments are going back to the haters, just saying, just please take your time, watch that again, because obviously you didn't get the point. And that's fair. We're throwing this stuff out there. We're expected. You got to have the thick skin, I think. I haven't gotten a lot one way or the other. I get a lot private, like in my message box, not out on the comment and not on the actual post. And I think that's fair, because if you're a vendor and you're trying to sell a service and I'm making fun of that service, I'm not going to like that. I may like it, but I'm not going to hit the button. Yeah. It's kind of like when you're talking on the phone. It's those days of being in the pit and your sales boss is watching. You're like pretending to make a call. Yeah. Oh, sure. Contract. Get that right out. So you've had a lot of practice.
Yeah.
No, I find it really interesting. I've been 20 years now watching sales managers in real estate offices trying to get the troops on the same page. And one of the disconnects for me has always been the broker and the C-level folks pushing products down to these independent contractors. Right. And we can knock the CRM. We both agree that you need one. You should have data stored somewhere, but it should not run your life. More importantly, it should not run the way the boss is treating that salesperson. Like you had mentioned, it's all up here, and you don't want to get this guy pissed off, because if he doesn't type it in there, provide someone to help him type it in there, maybe.
Right. Yeah, I think people, certainly in the last 10 years, the pendulum has swung too far. Because when I got into sales, there were CRMs like Act, but spreadsheets and whiteboards and forecast reviews. But then, once Salesforce kind of got there, and all of a sudden managers could look at a dashboard versus talking to reps, the dashboard became the focus instead of the reps and the customers. And all of a sudden, the dashboard isn't activity. It's a representation of what you want to see. Right. And I say it's the third best information. The best information is in your client's head. The second best information is in the rep's head. Third best information is in the CRM. Right. right? And you can spend the whole day typing into the CRM and you will not get everything out of your head, right?
No, and then you have the sales folks that are just putting in fluff because they know the sales manager is going to look at that
that's
and
what
make
they
sure
do,
that
right?
I don't know. I don't know the percentage. I wouldn't say half, but maybe it is that many that are just saying, "Gosh, I know Sally's going to be looking at this afternoon. I better put some stuff in."
And I've I've heard the manager say, "Just put it in." You know, right? They go, certainly in the industries that I came from, it was like everyone wanted 300% of your quota in pipeline,
Hmm.
and you would literally hear this, "Just make it up." Right.
Yeah, that's on
And
one of
so,
your videos. Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
So basically what's happening is people are playing office instead of selling.
Yeah.
And that's why I had that title, Brutal Truth. Is like, let's talk about what's the truth, not the game, right? Because at the end of the day, the game only keeps your job. You know, the truth is what
And
goes
waste.
in the
Yeah,
bank.
waste time.
It just wastes time. Yeah. And
So, Brian, so everyone watching this, if you haven't followed Brian, Brutal Truth About Sales podcast is one you should definitely pay attention to. And then you'll get some giggles, you'll get some laughs, and you'll probably get some stuff in your brain that you should put back in there, because I feel like we get maybe lost at sea, because we're getting towards the end of the year. Folks are trying to finish up their quota, and I completely get it. And I completely get the plight of the sales manager as well. But I don't think there's always that collaboration, that teamwork. And it's more about, if I as a rep want to help another rep, yeah, I should be allowed to do that. But you spoke to the fact that, you know what, I'm a sales guy. I got to control my own world. So there's a little bit of a mad fight in there when you're trying to be a good collaborator and teammate.
well, yeah, I mean, because the manager looks at their team as a team, but the rep doesn't get any benefit from the other rep's activity, nor does that rep get any benefit from yours. So we're kind of loosely coupled team players,
Right.
But it's the manager's job to train the rep, right? It's not the rep's job to train the rep.
Yeah.
You know, it might be nice and there's a collaboration if they like each other, but it's purely a voluntary activity.
And you don't want to take that selling time away from that top rep either. But to be fair, there are some things that the top rep can help the new rep. There should be some sort of compensation, some sort of shared commission or whatever. But I think that if you're going to really rely on that top rep to help out and train, there has to be some, not always monetary either, but yeah, certainly monetary is the goal for the sales guy. But in general, just making sure they're compensated and shown gratitude.
Yeah, and the leader can say, like, look, I'll take care of your territory and your quota. Just help me out with this person. Let them go along with you. More than just for one day.
Right.
And a good leader builds that rapport with the reps. And I think the best model for that is if you look at like the mafia, right, where they're not related, but it's treated like a family. Not the criminal side of it, but the social side of it.
Right.
Right. When the people are dedicated to each other, committed to each other. And when that manager leaves and goes to another company, the reps just follow because that leader takes care of them, as opposed to hosing them over or trying to make them all equal, even though they're not equal.
And do you think that happens more in the independent contractor world, where these managers will leave and the folks will follow because it might be easier as an independent?
Yeah, I don't know that space that well.
Right. Okay.
I know it more from the recruiter space, but because that world is very different. And I owned a business where everyone was a 1099.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not paying them or they're not getting a lot out of it, they're not showing up.
Right.
Nor should they. Right? If you want them to show up, you do something for them. Mm-hmm. Because my manager would always say, like, I want to have a team meeting. Well, why would everyone say, oh yeah, I'll be there. And they all RSVP like an hour before. Oh, the traffic's terrible.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
And so the value at real estate meetings has always been the bringing the donuts, the bagels, and having that as the enticement. And oh my gosh, it's so 1970, I guess I could say, because it hasn't changed. And you're still having that downfall with the 30 folks that are salespeople in your office, and only 4 show up at the office meeting, 2 for the donuts, Two, because they didn't know it was an office meeting. They just happened to be in the office.
Right.
But it's a certain plate, and it's definitely not easy. But this sort of thing that we're doing, it makes it easier to reach out and touch one-on-one, and they should be doing more of it.
Yeah. And I've had clients at the other end of the spectrum where there was no commission. It was pure base. And they're all smiley, happy people.
Yep.
Right. But at 5 o'clock, it's yabba dabba do time. Right.
Yep. Yep.
So that you get 100% cooperation, but nobody's extending themselves. Nobody's getting up at 4 a.m. to get on a plane to,
it really is it's a fine line. And so we're looking at these real estate companies that are thinking about not being a commission model, being a salary model. And I just can't see how that will ever, it could work, but you're going to go from 30 agents in your office to 5 agents in your office. And can they then handle the workload? There's the other side to it, maybe. I don't know. I just think it's certainly something up for a great debate, but it's not changing in the business the way they get folks into these meetings and get them on the same page. Because with the CRM, like you and I talked about, if the CMO, the CTO, the general manager, the CEO all have a different idea of what adoption is with that CRM, you're never going to get 100%. And quite frankly, you're never going to get 100% anyway. I think for real estate, they need 100% in the transaction part, but not in their customer relationship part. If that makes sense to you.
Yeah. And the thing I've seen work the most is they have a sales admin that calls the rep, goes through the CRM with them to get the leader the information that they need. And that admin updates it, corrects it, because that person is not expensive. And I don't think the rep is trying to hide anything. It's just, unless they get value out of it, they're not going to put time into it.
Right. It's prioritizing, and the prioritizing 9 times out of 10 is going to be making a buck, and that's fair. And that's what the sales leaders, that's what they want them to do anyway.
They do.
Okay, so Brian, I've really enjoyed this, and I'll tell you, Brian and I are going to be co-hosts eventually someday, some way, somehow. But so I always wrap it with the bucket list, and I'm not exactly sure where you're going to take this, because we talked briefly about, because your sales career was phenomenal. You've done incredible things on your personal side, your business side, but on the real personal side, is there something that's on that bucket list for Brian that A, might shock us, and B, you're going to make sure you attain?
Probably not. Nothing that will shock you.
No Dublin trip to track the boys down, or no?
No, I mean, I enjoy my life kind of the way. Have you
been quite a few places around the world, or no?
I've seen the whole country, the U.S. several times, Canada, Mexico, traveling. I just enjoy life. I like doing what I'm doing.
Yeah. So perhaps this was on your bucket list 20 years ago and you didn't even know it.
Well, what I didn't like about sales was working for someone else. Meaning that constraint, that January 1st, here's your new territory, your new comp plan. And all of a sudden you go from, in my space, it was like 15% commission down to 3% commission.
Right.
So you're talking about a 5X incentive. And I was money motivated. And I worked for a lot of mediocre managers. So now I work for myself, and it's up to me. I got no one else to blame, right? It's all about, figuring out social media, helping people, communicating with them. So the bucket list is still a little far away, despite my appearance.
Nice. We're going to keep tabs on that, though, Brian. I really will, because I think you should think about it a little bit, because you do wonderful things for everyone else. You entertain, you inform, you educate, but there has to be some time for Brian too. I mean, again, you just pointed out that you enjoy doing this, so this could very well be, like I said, 20 years ago, it might have been on your bucket list, saying, you know what, I'm done with management. I'm done. I'm going to try to find my own way, and you have.
Yeah, I mean, living on a tropical island would be nice, I guess.
Right. With that U2 cassette, we're all ready to go.
Yeah, cool.
Brian, you're awesome. As we end on a real estate radio, we all say good day.
Good day, my man.
Is it getting better? Or do you feel the same?